that's probably going to be a pretty dangerous endeavor here.
Just video the whole thing?
Yeah.
All right. You good? You got your glasses on straight?
Well, I seem to have got myself into quite the predicament here. As you can see, it's, you know, sub 32 degrees out, and you saw I had to cantilever this thing on with another tractor onto the trailer. Now, I'm at my own place of residence and I don't have any way to get it off. Now, this was a smoking good deal, reason being that the rear end was stuck, you know, is how it was listed. And as you can see down in there, there's still a good amount of ice and water. So what happened is it got stuck, it got parked outside, there was no boot on the shifter here, and we had a pretty rainy fall, so water found its way more than likely in through here, and then obviously now that it's cold, it all froze. So I'm gonna have to find a way to melt that, or I'm not going to be able to get this off my trailer, because that's what's holding the wheels up from rotating at the moment. Well, this isn't really an option, but it's the first thing I thought of. I could take it to a car wash, a manual car wash, and blow the hot water literally into the transaxle, which is a terrible idea. And that other side, you know, it looks like there's not a whole lot of ice. I could just get in there with a chisel and knock it out. But if you look at the fill hole here, this is all the way full of ice. And then you look at the axle tube and, you know, you might be able to draw a conclusion that, well, there's probably ice all the way throughout this axle tube and throughout the whole transaxle, more than likely. So, I don't know. Aside from this feeling exceptionally wrong here, it does seem to be working. So it's kind of quickly melting the ice out of there, relatively, you know, 20 minutes or so. And it's, get out of here. It's almost like, check that out. So if I grab onto the wheel here, now we have some movement. I don't know if I'd recommend flooding a transaxle or crankcase with water, but desperate times, I suppose. I can still feel a big old chunk of ice here in the fill hole. You can't really see it, but this will just conveniently stay there for a while. And we'll just let that run. And you can kind of see in here where the shift forks would have been, and now it does move. I expected this to be a whole lot rustier than it is, so the water intrusion must have been fairly recent, but those move. And check this out. That's what we like to see. Side note, after trying every single incorrect combination, I think I found neutral here. So our front gear, let's see if I can get you guys in there so you can see what's going on. This front gear, I slid right into this position here, and now I need both hands to do it, but I think that is neutral. As you can see, it's quite a bit of motion. I think our rear end is finally unlocked. Now I'm going to try and roll this thing off the back of the trailer. I don't have a lot of time as the sun's going down and it's getting cold quick, so I need to get it off there and then get the water out of it. Now I bought this old Alice for a song. Really, I only bought it for the tires, the mower deck, and the 3-point adapter. If you do anything with old tractors like this, you know that the tires are wildly expensive. You can ask my friend Flatty McFlatflat over here how he feels about his flat tire. So you know, when I saw this for next to nothing, I thought, I'm gonna buy a set of tires and there's gonna be a tractor attached to it. So today, you know, I think the first thing we're gonna do is pull the hood. I don't even know if the engine is seized or not. I really don't care, but if it isn't, boy, we got a heck of a deal, I think. Now, I grew up a city kid. I'm not really sure how I got into doing all these tractors and cars and everything, but you know, one day I just got kind of fed up and moved out in the middle of nowhere, and you know, I don't think I could ever go back. To think I used to make fun of the redneck kids in high school. You don't want to know what type of person I was in high school. You'd never believe it. Legend has it that if you take all the bolts out, the hood probably comes off a little easier. Is that the right way to do it? I don't know, but it worked, I suppose. All right. Ta-da! No more hood. Now, as is tradition, you always have to be leery when people say it was always parked inside. If they feel the need to tell you that, it's probably because it wasn't. You know, if you ever catch someone telling you something, it's probably because it's not the case. But if it wasn't already obvious by the seat, obviously we have some serious rust going on with the exhaust. One of the things I found in life is that if people are trying to tell you the way something is, there's a good chance that that's not the truth. Usually the truth in life is self-revealing, and if someone is trying to convince you of something, you know, it's probably because that's not actually the way things are. So sometimes it's innocent, and sometimes it's a little less than innocent. At least our spark plugs are coming out, so they look okay-ish. If nothing else, it seems like, oh, okay. We'll get the other one. I guess winter did that thing in. That's a shame. Now what I was trying to say there is that if nothing else, this thing was an oil burner, so, you know, maybe was heavily used. Pretty handy tractor in its day, so I wouldn't be surprised, but oftentimes the worn engines that burn a lot of oil actually self-preserve very well where the cylinders don't rust up. So might work to our advantage, might not. We'll find out here in a hot second. Get my hand crank from my buddy here. If you all have followed me for a while, you probably remember this old rig. Came back from, you know, the absolute unimaginable, and it's put in some serious work right up until the rim rusted out and it blew a tire. But, you know, we've kind of come up with something since then. So it's done a good job. Hopefully this one falls in line too. Here we go, maybe. It's not good, but it moves. Not sure what that was. Makes good sense because we're right here to pull the valve cover. Obviously we want to get all this schmoo out of here so it doesn't fall in our probably junk engine anyway. But at least I'm going to put in a good effort here. And I mean, you can't expect miracles on these old tractors. You know, I mean, this thing is from like the early 40s or something. You know, it's had a long life, but I've been proved wrong on more than one occasion with these old tractors where they just look like absolute garbage and they pretty much fully recover. All right, that was quite the battle. So we're going to see this together in real time and it doesn't look that bad. Gee dang it, thing looks pretty good. I was really hoping that it wouldn't be, and then I could just relegate it to a parts tractor, but I don't know. I guess at this point, get power to the battery and let's spin it over under power. And I just figured it goes without saying that I did check that the engine had oil in it before I did all this. I just assume people would assume that of me, but I always get people that say something about it, so there you go. I just figured we'd cover that before we had to, you know, get slaughtered in the comments. But anyway, I noticed the starter rod is missing. You know, it would, you know, let me just show you the other one. So this is wrong. If we go over here to our friend, so there's a few variations, but the starter's kind of down here, or the starter's here, and this rod kind of pushes this plunger up in and engages the starter. So we're missing that on our other one. So that's kind of, I don't know if that got robbed. The mice have chewed up the battery cable pretty good, and it runs all down along the frame. So this could end up being a time, and it probably will be. Now often with garbage that sits out in the elements, the starter tends to be a problem in some way, shape, or form. So I got it probed here. We're getting 12 volts down to the starter itself, but when we press the plunger in, you know, obviously I'm not hearing anything. So either these contacts are corroded or our starter might be foobar. So I went ahead and I pulled this off, and I thought, well, you know, maybe our contacts aren't doing so great. And so kind of an interesting deal here. Goes up from the bottom lug into that bottom very dirty piece of copper that's probably not making great continuity. And basically when you engage this, it bridges the two together. See if I can give you a look, but it's just an arbitrary chunk of garbage. A little bit of oil here in the flappy do for the back bearing of the starter. And looks like it's not taking oil so good, so not a good sign. So bypassing our switch here, I'm going to just touch the starter directly. Oh, and get sprayed with oil, son of a gun. Silver lining here, at least our starter worked, so we're in the money. All right, let's give her the bean dip, see what happens. No oil pressure, so that's good. Cranks over pretty darn fast. I think the body of the starter seems pretty good. Tighten this back up here and just hope I never have to take that starter out. It's obviously going to be a battle. Kind of concerned about not seeing any oil pressure, so take our filter off, just see, and it doesn't look like, it looks like water. Oh no. Oh boy. So we weren't pumping up anything into there, but it's got water or coolant in it. Concerning. Let's drain the oil. Not good. Our Alice Chalmers coolant temp gauge says it's cold as all get out, and unfortunately there is nothing in the radiator. Oh, that's good. That was probably doing a lot. So for now I'm gonna imagine I didn't see that. Definitely used and abused. Kind of curious to see what comes out of the drain plug. I had to look again just to make sure I wasn't crazy, but sure looks like coolant to me. I don't know about you guys. Uh-oh. Ah! Not a lot of coolant, but it definitely had coolant in it. Doesn't look very milkshaky though, so kind of weird. So obviously we've come to a slight impasse. This poor engine is pretty down on its luck. Now we have some question marks. So I'm going to think about what I'm going to do for a while. We'll move on to the ignition, which has a whole bunch of squirrely stuff going on. But, you know, if you guys were in this case, would you throw some diesel down the crankcase just to help clean all that gunk out? I'm suspicious that the pickup tube for the oil pump might be completely gacked. I'm just not sure. It obviously pumped coolant up to the oil filter, so, you know, I don't know. So against my better judgment here, this is a gasoline diesel mixture. And if you remember my old Maverick, about this time last year, I went to a gas station and picked up some 91, but they had put diesel in the 91 octane tank. And naturally I had almost completely an empty tank, so I got a full tank of diesel, more or less. Now, if you want to know the conclusion of that story, ultimately the gas station did pay me out for their mistake. And it was a pretty decent payout. So they were nice about it, and I'm glad, because I went and told them and stopped a lot of other people from having the same issue. And to really add insult to injury, we'll just pump this all around. Maybe if there's any blockages, I don't know. Wishful thinking probably, but maybe it'll get them out. In hindsight, being 2020, probably shouldn't have done that right before we start on trying to figure out the ignition system. So making good choices today. I can see it. Man, what do we got going on here? This wire comes all the way around, goes into all this debacle of a mess, which is probably all for the 6 volts. So, oh boy. Looks like we got something for the headlights that was done relatively recently. I'm thinking we can tag off this and send 12 volt to our coil and get everything squared away that way. So the switch is on right now here, and we have 12 volts on the one side, and then we have 12 volts going out, and that's on this orange wire, which snakes around here all cattywampus like, goes up to here, and no love lost because our headlights are not on. So I'm going to repatriate this wire here as our ignition wire, and I don't feel too bad. It's got a wire nut on it anyway. And this may seem stupid, well, because it is, but with having that auxiliary switch there and using it for this purpose, again, we're not energizing any of this other stuff that's probably foobar and might give us issues. We're basically directly off the battery over here to the coil where we can, you know, kind of figure out what's what. There we go. That looks good. So I think I'm going to try and find a 12 volt coil. This is more than likely a 6 volt coil, and that's not going to work now that we're on a 12 volt system. We'll burn it out super fast if it isn't already, which, you know, it probably is. So I don't know. That blaster coil is looking pretty good. You know, I don't even know if I kept it because it works well or it looks old-timey, and I just thought that was a nice display item, but I figure we're going to see what's what right quick. Coil's all hooked up here the proper way. I got the switch on up there, which isn't dangerous whatsoever. Obviously, I had to be overly gaudy with it and expose the old-timey label, so I got a spark plug routed here, and we're basically going to simulate what the distributor does by interrupting the ground. Granted, we don't have the capacitor in there, but should be good enough for us to see if the coil works. So when I drag it across the ground to simulate the distributor, we can see some spark. Doesn't show up on camera super well. There we go. That one you could see. And so our ignition coil is good. And I'm going to very quickly shut it off because I can smell that it's getting really hot. So There we go. Pro tip here, anything that's old and electrical, you really want to make sure you clean up everything that's supposed to make continuity, or else, you know, you could start chasing a ghost. And really, it's just after this stuff has been on so long, it kind of gets corroded, and you do need to clean it up. And obviously, it goes without saying, you're going to need to sand the point gap. All you guys that watch my channel are smart, so I feel like I don't need to elaborate too much on what we're doing here. You've probably all done it before. Now again, the distributor interrupts the ground to the coil, at which point it discharges the spark. So when it comes up to a lobe here is where it breaks this ground connection. So the point gap that's in here doesn't look too bad. At least we can test spark on it. So we want to make sure that that's moving and contacting, and it is. And this engine is getting really tight for some reason, which is never good. So at this point we can do something pretty nifty. We can actually roll the engine over somewhat like it is, and we can fire that singular spark plug and basically verify our coil. Before we do that, I probably want to drain all the diesel gasoline mix out of here because I'm sure it's going to fly all over, and I don't really want to blow up today. Maybe tomorrow. I expect to see absolute tar. Can't say that I'm super stoked about all this coolant. Well, I suppose it could be diesel at this point, but boy, it's never a good sign. All right, so in goes the 1540 Rotella. Pretty much just it's because of what I have here. Back to ignition. Now that we're not going to blow ourselves up, we have our plug wire grounded very strangely but effectively nonetheless hooked to our coil, and our coil is now hooked to our distributor. So every time that comes around, if our points and condenser are correct, it should interrupt the ground and fire our spark plug 4 times as often as it normally would, but we'll know if all of our equipment is doing its job. So ignition key is on here. And we do, I think, I can't see it, but I can hear it. I know I just talked about not getting blown up, but this is something I don't normally do on camera, but ought to work. All right, so that's enough tempting fate. I think we do have spark, so let's put the plug wires in here, and I think we're ready to see if this thing will fire off. Now obviously the carb is probably going to be hot garbage. The fuel system is still completely foobar. At least needs cleaned out at the minimum, but this will at least show us what we have and if it's worth moving forward, you know. Doesn't make a lot of sense to go through all this effort for something that doesn't have a chance or has a blown head gasket or is just going to arbitrarily blow up the moment we hit it. So, engine's hot. Roll on 1 here. I didn't expect that. Boy, I wish I had a functional fuel system right about now to go a long way. I'm gonna choke it here. Blew out a lot more of the exhaust. That's fine. That's what you want. And so our key is on. And so we're gonna just tap these together, and I think it's gonna be a runner. Man, that just immediately blew the snot out of that thing. Big surprise. It's pretty thin. Against my better judgment here, I don't know what that is, but that is not gasoline anymore. All these valves are stuck, and whatever is in this tank. Let's see if we can get a look. Oh yeah, absolutely putrid. All right, I'm gonna have to get creative, I think, because this is totally clapped at the moment. All right, well, that probably took 10 years off my life and wasn't worth it, but it did do a pretty darn good job of cleaning up the carb here at the expense of my health. Pine Sol, boiling Pine Sol is like the doomsday button for a carb, okay? It can free up a lot of stuff and do a lot of things, but it's going to strip every coating off, and then, you know, it's like dead clean. So the carburetor, if it's a cast iron one like on a tractor, it's going to immediately oxidize, but it does clean everything out really well. And check that out, it cleaned it up enough where you can see where someone, you know, cracked the top part of the carb here with the fuel line, and they brazed it back on. And interestingly enough, if you look, okay, well, I didn't do that. Take two. Good thing it's a cast iron carb, you can take a beating. But what I was gonna say is you can see where they tested out their brazing or silver soldering on the bottom of the carb before they did it to the actual afflicted area of the crack. Kind of interesting there. Do we bend anything? Oh yeah, a little bit. Might want to bend that back. That's the problem with filming stuff. It's always like you need 3 hands. Let's give it a little tweak right there. See, and what am I gonna do? Holding the camera. There we go. Good as new. All right, pretty curious to see how this goes here. Probably a pretty low probability, but I always like trying to use original stuff when I can, just for the fun of trying. They made these old Zenith, made in the USA. I mean, they're just darn cool, cast iron and all. Gaskets, you know, I put a healthy amount of grease on them, including on the carb itself, so if you ever take it apart, they don't stick, which we'll probably have to take this off again. Hopefully not, but probably. I'm just being realistic. Ain't nothing to it. Just your typical 8/16 wrench here, or if you're a metric guy, a 12.7, and we're gonna be all good to go, I think. I think we're not getting fuel from the carb. Anyway, I didn't want to pull the jets out originally because they're real tight, but I think we're gonna have to. That thing was rusted up pretty good, and I'm sure even after boiling it, there's stuff in the passages. Side note, this is one of the reasons I coat carb gaskets, and oh boy, we're getting some pretty good thunder out there, but I coat carb gaskets in grease. You saw it came apart, and you know, we didn't tear our new gasket because we'd be out of luck. But as you can see, it doesn't really want to stick to anything, which is really handy. And you can see our main jet right there at the base of the carb. Fuel is sitting on top of it, so that's not good. That means that thing is plugged up. There's a better look at it. And to absolutely nobody's surprise, this channel down here, you know, that's the bottom of the carb. So you can imagine where all this rust and corrosion was going to build up, right in the main jet circuit. So I've finally broken through where I can see the jet clean out tool through to this end, and we've broken through quite a bit of rust. So I think we have it defeated. And I just want to show you what victory looks like. So here's our main jet. We're gonna look right in there, and yeah, buddy, she's flowing everywhere she should. Probably should have caught that the first time around. I must have been huffing the carb cleaner too long. Check this out. I started to put the carburetor on backwards. Oh boy. Genius. Once again, carb is on the correct direction. Choke is on. Ignition is on. Extra helper, battery, jumper, spinny engine, fasty, McGee is engaged. So now, I bet you it runs. big difference there with the carb. Touch our little starter bolt here. Well, that was something. I don't know if it was good or bad, but it ran. Oh boy. Open a door here. I would be more excited, but I don't know if that showed up on camera, but the whole exhaust was shooting sparks. So that's probably not great. So yeah, I don't know. Want to roll her over again? I do. At least one thing I can say for sure, our carb stuff worked out. So our choke is all the way off now. Come around here. Turn our ignition on. Our please spin over with some speed 1000 McGee. And now our little bolt guy. Oh. That might have done it there. So try number 2. Ouch. Holy cow, right in the shin. Oh, all right. I'm sure I deserved that. Some karma thing going on. Ignition's on. Da da da. Okay, that's not so bad. Low idle, gang. Nope, too low. Okay. All right, I think we have a running engine. Son of a gun. I need to eat now. I haven't eaten all day. All right, so now since we've blown all the big holes in the exhaust and no particulate is going to fly in the engine, going to remove this, and well, it looks like oil's getting up to everything, so we'll fire it off here. I just want to make sure everything's oiling okay, because oil pressure is kind of suspicious, but you know, that gauge is older than time, so wouldn't be at all surprised if it ain't reading right, but it probably is, and oil pressure is probably a little low. And it definitely had no coolant in it, so that's always good. Always a good sign. Totally what you want to see. All right, ignition is on. Our little bypass here. Oh, come on. A little bit of throttle maybe.
14, 14, 14, 13, 14, 1350, sir. We got our internets in. Both of you on the cords out. 1300, 1350, 1350, sir.
So it's a new day, and frankly, I'm impressed. So impressed that I actually opted to spend some money, arguably more than I paid for the whole tractor, to get some replacement parts. Namely that blown up exhaust intake manifold thing. Because as fun as all this is, especially this port, just gonna incinerate the hood, and I don't know, I intend to actually use the thing quite a bit. I never do these revivals just to be like, hey, look everybody, I actually use this stuff. And it's a very useful unit with that mower, in theory. So, copious amounts of money later, we have a valve cover gasket, obviously, and especially a new intake and exhaust manifold. And it came with a gasket. That was polite of them for as much as the dang thing cost. And unfortunately, it looks like I'm using up all my good luck on something probably relatively easy. All these bolts are super loose, so that never happens. You never want to use up all your good luck on projects like this, because generally something way worse is going to fight you much more. So I'll take it as a victory for now, but I won't be suspicious if something else comes up. Look at that. That's amazing. And pro tip, normally when you're going to remove exhaust bolts, you want to warm up the engine first and then shut it down. Generally thermal expansion and everything. If you don't remember anything else from this video, if you're working on exhaust, do that. I got lucky this time. Naturally, new parts aren't going to be as good as old parts when they were in production. So, that casting has a bunch of core shift and everything else, but got through it and made everything work. Got our little flappy do exhaust in, and I'm never going to be able to get that back out again. So, yeah, with that, let's get the valve cover done. All right, so strike two with replacement parts. I was able to kind of make the exhaust manifold work, which was, but now, look at the valve cover gasket. That's not going to ride, so I'm going to have to reuse the gasket, and I'm missing a piece. So gasket sealer is going to be my friend, but I would think that I just don't throw stuff away like that because, I just autism it out all the time. But, it was convenient. I figured it would be under the tractor. That is winning. It's a prime example of why you don't always pick stuff up until you're entirely done with a project, because you never know what piece of garbage you're going to end up reusing, even though you shouldn't. But I kind of want to get done today. Well, that is 2,000% the wrong thing to do, but will it work forever? Well, I honestly probably not. This is a terrible idea, and don't do anything you see in this video at this point. Just putting some grease on here so the gasket stays on the valve cover side, not the engine. The old valve cover. This feels like some stuff straight out of Cuba at this point. All right, my friends, we're looking pretty good. Valve cover's on, and I know this engine probably has a lot of schmoo in it from water and everything else. And so I got some Marvel Mist Oil, which I really don't recommend doing, but we're going to pour this right in the crankcase to try and free up all those deposits, let it run. And really I need to start moving stuff around because I think this rig is ready to darn near drive itself out of here. Exciting stuff. I generally don't like to blend that stuff cold, and I kind of want to hear what the new exhaust sounds like. So ignition on, and I don't know, a little bit of throttle maybe. Do our little touch bolt thing. Man, whatever this oil coating is that was on here for shipping, it absolutely stinks. Smells like Cancer 1000. It definitely sounds like a straight pipe tractor. Pretty ratty, but that'll kind of fix the appearance. That'll probably be a problem. One of these days I need to fix this tire. You ever gonna get any work done on this thing? So this is a match made in heaven here. One of my favorite tools from days gone by. So we'll just sneak right in here. And we're going to use the tractor's engine itself to air up the tire on the Volkswagen with this cool 1950s McGee. So step one is to remove a spark plug. Let's see what that guy looks like after running for the first time in God knows how long. And questionable. Okay, that's exactly what we thought. Not a whole lot to this thing. You got your adapter here with your valve, and then your adapter hose to fill the tires. So let me get everything installed on the engine and we'll be good to go. So we're hooked up. The valve is in the spark plug hole attached to the hose, and the hose is attached to the tire. Now, this valve is supposed to be such that it doesn't draw fuel into the chamber or essentially into the tire. And we'll test that here in a second by seeing if we can light what's coming out of it on fire. But before we do that, let's just air up our tire before we blow ourselves up. So I don't know, is it going to start on a low idle with 3 cylinders? Probably going to idle it up here just a little bit. I'm sure the more RPM, the more air. You can see the tire going up. All right, there you go. 3540 PSI. Well, that could be fuel coming out of it. Huh. I'd like to think that engineers know what they're doing, so we're going to give it the old flame test. I think it's probably safe. How could they have made them so long if they weren't? All right, here we go. See if the valve's doing its job. I'm just screwing with you guys. No, it works completely fine. You know, the air actually blows out the fire on the thing. So the valve does its job really well. Some bonus science here. Remember, our spark plug was super dirty, either from all the oil I put in the engine to lubricate the cylinders, the engine itself being 100 million years old, or the oil in the exhaust intake manifold from shipping. So our spark plug, suffice it to say, is pretty dirty. So check this out. And I don't know how well this shows up on camera on our spark plug tester. But oh, you can even see it down below. The spark is really inconsistent, and it's just trying to find the path of least resistance, which, because it's so dirty, as you can see, it's not across the gap. Pretty cool. So let me clean that up and we'll retest it. So literally 2 seconds here with the wire brush and some carb cleaner. Let's just see what the difference is. The carb cleaner might explode, but you know, it's whatever. Look at how much more dramatic that spark is. No arcing. So suffice it to say, I'm probably going to pull all these plugs and clean them up, because what a massive difference that is. These are really handy. All right, spark plugs are all clean and sparking well, so it's time to get little Franz out of here with an aired up tire. Rolls pretty good. As you can see, this is why it isn't being driven. If I remember right, this is pretty precarious. If you kind of look here, move around, see these two poles here? This tractor like barely fit through, so it's gonna be an adventure, I think. But the moment I've all been waiting for, because this thing has made this whole garage smell like raccoon poop and mouse piss. Very exciting. Remind me never to put anything here again. So there's our clearance on that side. There's our clearance on this side. Fighting flat spots and floppy-doo steering. You know what they say, rubbing's racist. Last time starting up in the building, hopefully. Assuming the transmission works, which, you know, we know how that is. Starts right up pretty good with spark plugs. I notice it isn't popping and cackling either. Oh, pretty good. Transmission's pretty noisy. I really never considered the seat. Hopefully I don't get my nuts caught in this thing. All right, clutch seems to work. It's pretty precarious. I don't know about that. See if we can find first gear. I said, see if we can find first gear. Can we find any gears? Not easily. Okay, well, we're in second gear. Here we go. It is moving. How about that? This transmission here sounds pretty rough, but come to think of it, I think I got diesel in it, but take a listen. Yeah, that's the good stuff. I think we should put some gear oil in it, for God's sake. This is like the best low idle gang engine I've ever had, but I think we better get the oil changed and get some oil in the differential here before we destroy all of our hard work that we've gone through. With any luck, we've loosened up the sludge in the transaxle back there and in the bottom of the engine, and we can drain it out and have a pretty good tractor. It's going to last a long time. Fingers crossed. Well, my friends, it doesn't look good in there. Here comes the plug. Huh. Yeah, like I said, there's a lot of sludge back there. Oh boy. I expect hole number 2 to be better, as we could clean this one out by hand previously. Yeah, no sludge on that side per se. Nothing like the back. Well, let's see what our engine looks like. It's got to be better, right? I know it had a lot of gunk, but it's had some run time to kind of scrub things out. That is why we didn't run that very long. Look how filthy that is. That is a very minimalistic amount of runtime there, but that is the beauty of Marvel Mystery Oil in the crankcase. I wouldn't run for a long time on it, but if you want to get the gunk out, boy, it'll do it. That is bad. Finally take our old crummy filter off, and remember, you know, someone tried to work on this many years ago as they were hitting the filter trying to get the spark plugs out. So suffice it to say, this is an old guy. Maybe I should probably take this plug out before I do this. There we go. Let's see what's inside of here. Oh, well, doesn't look that bad, aside from the rusty filter. Rust on the inside also. And what's kind of horrifying with tractor engines, and in the same vein super impressive because they last so long, is that the oil filter system is like a secondary deal. It's, you know, on a modern car, it has to go through the oil filter before it goes through the bearings. Nuh-uh, with a tractor or an old 50s vehicle, that's not the case. So all of that schmoo was, you know, probably going through the bearings a little bit. And that's just amazing that they just don't care. It just blows my mind. And of course, that's what we had to do to get all the gunk out of the bottom of the pan. But if you tried to do, you know, run that stuff through a modern engine, man, it would destroy it. It's just impressive what tractors can handle. Just forever blows my mind. Alright, so here goes nothing. Transmission's a little bit quieter, but, you know, still not amazing. Hopefully it loosens up and we can get first gear at some point. I never like when stuff doesn't work exactly the way it should. Usually it's a short trip to everything not working. It still sounds pretty bad. Still no first gear. Alright, so far I know I got second. Still can't get first. Oh, I think we finally got third. Sure do. Transmission's a little noisy. Well, I had zero expectations for this thing, and by all rights, this tractor owes me nothing. So far we're doing better than I thought we would. The engine is actually extremely healthy and the rear end works, I think. So one thing I've noticed here is after it's warmed up, it seems like it's going into gear easier, so we're gonna give the old first gear a shot. And it fell right in. Apparently I don't know how to use a clutch all of a sudden. But now, we have a first gear. That's a full-blooded tractor now. Now this tractor is technically a mower, so this is some super thick stuff that you normally use a brush hog on. I just want to see what it can do, or even if the PTO actually works. So we're going to engage it. These belts should turn. Oh, maybe. Now that we got first gear, which I thought was going to be pretty necessary. RPM. Hey, we got it. The real question is, if we take it out of gear here, 3 points, or the PTO's engaged, but it has this 3-point on it. So those should start up. Should be able to move this. Oh my goodness, look at that. I can't believe it. I cannot believe it. I gave it a 0% chance of that 3-point working. It's got a hydraulic cylinder and everything on it. But I'll tell you what, old tractor hydraulic systems, new stuff, you get any dirt in them, they're garbage. This old stuff, I mean, they can have sand in them and they'll still work. These things just blow my freaking mind, dude. It's amazing. It's a pretty capable rig at this point. And it just falls into first gear now. Good shape. See if we can't lower that a little bit. First gear, really give her the bean dip here. What an absolute tank. Color me impressed. I would have never imagined it could pull all that off. That is one heck of a capable unit right there. It's just, I can still barely believe it. I just love this old tractor stuff, man. Always amazes me. All right, my friends, I think next on my list is obviously drain the transaxle fluid again and put some really thick gear oil in it. Obviously I put some light stuff in. I'm just trying to get the goo out. So, you know, a few cycle changes there. We'll cycle through the engine once. Now that we move coolant around at a pretty hot temp, we'll get that drained. And man, I think this is gonna be a good little unit. It's extremely capable and I'm super pumped that I was able to pick it up. Boy, it was a lot of work, but it's always worth it with this stuff, I'll tell you what. I think I'm going to try and put a carb cheater on it and some other stuff. It's got a pretty good exhaust, and then we're really going to put it to the test. I had overfilled the radiator, so I was eating coolant from, you know, the expansion tank, which was all the way full. But check that out, all that heavy load, and it didn't even try and run hot. These little ACs, man, don't sleep on them. No one likes them around here, but boy, They're just really good rigs. And I'll be the first one to tell you, I didn't pick them. They picked me. People just give them away, want to throw them away. Don't throw them away. They're good stuff.